trust me, you already know what your purpose is. The question is, are you going to live it? Hi, welcome back to Mel's Talks. Lovely to be with you again. I hope you're well. We're going to be looking at anxiety part 2 today. And we're going to ask a question. Is imposter syndrome and anxiety the same thing? Are they linked? You know, can one go without the other? And what is imposter syndrome? What is that? What is it when people talk about imposter syndrome? And does it only affect women? So we're going to look at some of these things. So let's start off with anxiety. And we spoke a bit about this. I was very honest with you about my own journey with anxiety. But where does that come from? Why is it so linked to the menopause? And why, when we think about anxiety, do we commonly only think about women, mostly, that are anxious? So let's break it down. So first of all, remember that there are 2 parts to the menopause. There's the perimenopause and the menopause. And you can be perimenopausal from 10 years, up to 10 years before you actually stop your period and become technically menopausal. And you have to be without a period for consecutively a year, 12 months without a period to be in the menopause. And I know I'm reminding you, so I'll remind you, and for those of you that are new, when we think about the menopause, we don't just think about the symptoms of hot flushes or mood swings. It goes a lot deeper than that. There is brain fog, there's loss of concentration, there's heart palpitations, there's thinning hair, there's itchy skin, there's blurred vision, memory loss, just to name but a few. And we haven't even started talking about the vagina, and that's going to be a whole episode all on its own. But these hormonal changes that affect both your progesterone and your estrogen, so it's not just one thing, and we do talk a lot about estrogen, but I think what's really important for us to remember is that there's a whole host of hormones that are affected, and what our body is doing is it's trying to find its natural balance as some of these hormones, estrogen and progesterone, start to reduce. We know that the body works as a seesaw. So if one is rising, one is lowering. And when the other one is lowering, the other one is rising. And that's a seesaw effect that goes on between your estrogen and your progesterone that produces our cycle as women. What's also important to remember is that we also have testosterone. We've got follicle stimulating hormone. We've got luteinizing hormones. So there's a whole range of hormones that the balance is changing in response to. What we don't talk about, and what we will be really focusing in on in episodes to come, is progesterone. And no one really talks much about progesterone. And progesterone, quite opposite to estrogen, is actually our friend. It's the one that helps to protect us from all sorts of things, but it's also the one that when that starts to fluctuate, that's really where the problem comes in. It isn't so much the estrogen, it's more what's going on with the progesterone, and we are going to cover that sort of further down the line. I'm going to have a fabulous friend of mine come in that is an Ayurvedic medicine specialist, and we're going to look at what the effects of low progesterone really are and how you can start to look after your body. And also in that vein, along with that, is that we're going to look at endometriosis. So we're going to look at that because that and progesterone levels go together. So that's going to be an upcoming episode. So anxiety is a symptom of the menopause. It comes on because our body is in that fight or flight mode. Our body is in alarm state. It thinks that it needs to protect us. It's in protection mode. And when you're in that for a short period of time, that's fine, because it's a thing that helps us get up and go. It's the thing that we're excited about, going on a holiday, and you're just up and you're going and your cortisol levels are high and everything's great. It's the thing that you're taking your driving test and your hands are sweating and you're holding onto the steering wheel, your palms are sweating and your heart's beating really fast, but your eyes are alert to see what possible dangers could be coming. It's all of those things, but over a long period of time, your body becomes tired. You cannot stay in a state of alert forever. That's impossible. Your body starts to get tired, and that's where our symptoms come in. So the brain fog, because your brain it starts to fatigue. Your problems with your vision, because as I have said previously, your vision brain went then. You see, look, my own brain fog. In order for us to be able to see, that takes up 3/4 of our brain's energy. All of those things going on leads to us becoming anxious about small things, because everything seems to now be a problem, because we're heightened, our sensitivity is raised, because we're looking for that attack, which means that everything feels like it is almost too much. Everything becomes a burden. Everything becomes difficult. One of the other things that we are affected with is sleep. Our sleep patterns are totally disrupted. We are overtired. Your body is fatigued. Now, there can be two things here. You can fall asleep and then wake up because your mind is racing, or you can't get off to sleep at all because your mind is racing. You think you're tired, you get to bed, and then you can't sleep. Or you're woken up by hot sweat, and I don't mean just like a little bit of sweating, I mean the bed being drenched. So you get up, you have to change the bed, you have to cool yourself down, all of those things, and you can't get back to sleep. So the next day you're tired. Days and days, nights and nights, weeks and weeks of that leads to exhaustion, and now you're fatigued. And anybody that has had a lack of sleep will understand that their anxiety levels are going to be heightened, because you're tired, your body's literally knackered. So your brain isn't functioning as well as it could. You become short-tempered, and then you start being in a cycle of, what are people saying about me? What are people saying about my mood, about how I am, about the level of work that I'm doing, about how much I'm able to contribute to things? I'm now being snappy with my family. What are my family and friends saying? So now you're starting to become anxious and feel like you're not good enough anymore, because the simple things that you used to be able to do and cope with, now you can't. And that becomes a problem. And now you're in a cycle. And that's anxiety. And it comes down to hormone imbalances. It can lead to depression. It can literally stop you in your tracks. Totally. And it can come out of nowhere. You can be completely fine and then completely overwhelmed the next. And it's this shifting balance that happens all the time. So let's think about imposter syndrome then. Is that linked to anxiety? Are they the same thing? And people often assume that anxiety and imposter syndrome only kind of happens to women. Well, it doesn't. Men are just as prone to imposter syndrome and anxiety as women. They're just as prone to drops in testosterone level and progesterone as women, and to suffer some of the same symptoms that women suffer equally. They just don't discuss it because they feel like they can't discuss it. So along with their issues comes a really strong potential for mental health issues and suicide and depression, and men being admitted into psychiatric units, completely losing control. If we think about, there's some various films that have come out over the last few years where they've shown people breaking down in, like everyday life, the hardships of everyday life, and people literally breaking down. And in fact, there is one out now called Straw that you should maybe go and watch, about a woman that everything becomes too much. But in the past, there was one about a guy that was driving along and had road rage that turned into him sort of stopping the whole of New York. And it's a film a few years old, but he literally was having a breakdown because everything in his life was just starting to, become too much. It's stuff that we don't really talk about enough. Imposter syndrome can come on in many different forms at many different times in our life. And the reason why I've chosen to kind of talk about them almost together, anxiety and imposter syndrome, is because imposter syndrome is heightened when you are in stressful situations that are unfamiliar to you. So it could be that you've been given a promotion at work and you don't feel as though you are qualified enough for the promotion that you've been given. So you contrary to popular belief, and everyone else will tell you that you've worked hard and you deserve it, you don't feel like you deserve it. That's imposter syndrome. We've all been there. You happen to be in a situation where you have got, and it's when you start a new job as well. So you start a new job and you don't know everything because you've just started a new job, but you're afraid to show that you don't know everything because you think that somehow by saying that you don't know something or asking for help, it's going to make the manager that's just employed you think that he's made a mistake and not and sack you, which is ridiculous. That's imposter syndrome. When we are put into stressful situations, that comes up even more. Menopause is a stressful situation. If you are feeling anxious about things and you're already tired and already, feeling as though everything is just a little bit too much, you are going to start worrying that people are thinking that you're not good at your job and that you shouldn't be here and that you're not good enough for that promotion, so you won't go for it. Someone is asking you to do something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, but it will help you to shine. Ordinarily, you might have just relished that, but now you don't go for it for fear of failing. That's imposter syndrome. You're worried because you know that you're not remembering things so well and that you're getting brain fog. So you've been invited to give a big presentation and you shy away from giving it because you feel like you're going to fail. Fear of failure, that's imposter syndrome. And all of those things can become more heightened when we're in the menopause and our body's in that stress state. But I don't want you to just think that this is something that only affects menopausal women. So therefore, you've happened onto this podcast and you think, oh, she's talking about the menopause and I'm 25. I don't need to be here. You do. Because whatever you are going through now with your cycle and your periods, you need to take note of, because those are the things that will give you an idea of how your perimenopause and your menopause years are going to affect you. The more you know, the better equipped you are to deal with it. And it isn't a case of I'm telling you what to do, because I'm not. But I am suggesting that the more we are in touch with our bodies and the foods we eat, the amount of sleep that we get, the amount of laughing that we do, because we don't actually do enough laughing, and we know that raises our good endorphins, that good feeling. We don't do enough of that. So the more that we create situations to raise our joy, for want of a better term, the better that's going to be for us. All of these things are coping mechanisms that when you hit your perimenopause are going to help you to get through them, to get through that, because you're going to recognize when your body's balance starts to shift just a little bit, and you're going to be able to do something about it before it becomes the point where you are sitting feeling like you don't want to get up this morning and you don't know why, or you are, you're doing something that you would normally do, and suddenly you can't cope quite as well as you used to be able to cope, or you're not remembering words, or you're standing in front of a big presentation and you normally do this kind of stuff in your sleep, and all of a sudden your palms are sweaty and your face is dripping with sweat and you can't remember what you were about to say. So before you're in that situation, if you can take note of your body, how you are, how you feel, you then can be in control of dealing with your symptoms, and not your symptoms being in control of dealing with you. Sometimes we already know what our purpose is. We just don't always have the confidence to step into it, so we don't always believe in ourselves. So we've talked a lot about the symptoms, and we've talked about imposter syndrome, and we've talked about anxiety. But let's talk about finding your purpose. Let's talk about really looking into you and being able to feel who you are and where you know you want to be. So I'm talking about what you've probably not told anybody. I'm talking about your secret want, the thing that you really want to do, but you've told nobody because for whatever reason you feel as though you're not good enough, you're not qualified enough, you don't have the right contacts, you aren't in the right networks, you just don't know how to begin. Or you are just afraid of failing, or afraid that people will laugh at you. So if I turned around and said, I want to be a TV presenter, and the world just started laughing at me, I would just not do it. I'd run, I'd hide, if that's my deepest purpose. So how do we overcome that? How do we step into what I truly believe is the reason why we're here? How do we step into the purpose for our very existence? How do we step into that with all of the other noise that's going on around us? How is that possible? And so I'll share something with you, because, we seem to be going quite deep right now. So let me share something with you. I have always wanted to do this. I've wanted to do this for as long as I can remember. And here we are in 2025, and I am old, and just stepping into doing this. So those of you that kind of have been along this journey with me will know that I have a YouTube channel. And when you've gone on there to look at the podcast, you'll see that there are videos on there previously. And I love doing that, and I enjoyed it, and then I talked myself out of it, because who wants to hear from me? Who wants to know what I've got to say? So now you're asking yourself, all right, Mel, so how did you begin? And I will tell you, I began by taking one step. That's all. I told someone, a very good friend, what my wish was. We were just talking. It wasn't even like a deep conversation. And I just said, I'd really love to do a podcast. I've always wanted to do that. It's always been something that I've wanted to do. And that's where and here we are. One step at a time. That's all it is. No one's asking you to jump into the river and learn to swim while you jump. All I'm saying is take one step. And if your one step is just writing it down and getting it out of your head, that's the beginning, right? Write it down. The next question is how. So what is it? How are you going to go about it? If you were giving someone else advice, that's what you would say. You would say, oh yeah, okay, all right. How are you going to go about that? So ask yourself a question as if you weren't you. Write it down and ask the question. How are you going to go about it? Do you need to go and get qualified? Do you need to pick up the phone and call someone? Is there a friend or someone that you can go and talk to about it? Is it that you want to go and do an internship? I've got a friend who wanted to be an actor, and in his 40s he went to acting school because it's what he wanted to do. Didn't tell anybody until he was already, he was there and he was doing it for a little bit and he got a bit more confident with it. But it's one step. So maybe you don't tell anybody, you write it down and you follow your own advice, because trust me, you already know what your purpose is. You do. The question is, are you going to live it? Yeah. Okay, so anxiety and imposter syndrome. What can you do to help yourself? Anxiety is a tricky one because when you're in it, it's really hard to see your way out. You will know if you've watched me before, and if you haven't watched me before, why haven't you? And welcome. But you will know that I'm a big believer in journaling, in writing things down. And that's not because I've journaled for years and years and years, because I truly have not. But I have begun to journal, and I realise that it's not like writing my diary, because that's not what I do. I literally wake up in the morning, and for me I do it in the morning, some people do it at night. But I wake up in the morning, I meditate, I pray, and then I write. And I write sometimes my intentions for the day. So sometimes it's about what I want to do for the day. And other times it's just a list of thank yous. But it's whatever my pen is led to write in that moment. When I was really deep in my anxiety and depression, literally it was just, I just want to get through this day. I just want to get through this day. I just want to get through this day. That was it. Nothing else. But taking it out of my head and putting it on paper has a healing effect, because it's no longer just bouncing around in my head. And over time, doing that consistently, honestly, it will make a difference for you. They say that if you do something consecutively for 21 days, it becomes a habit. So I'm going to ask you, just ask, do you think that you could get up in the morning and just write down your thoughts, whatever comes into your head? Do not tax your pen, just let it write until it stops. Mostly 5 minutes is enough, and you just write. Whatever comes into your head, just write it out. Just put it out on the paper. You don't have to read it back if you don't want to, but if you can, read it back and then put it down and move on with your day. The thoughts out of your head, it's like that old sharing a problem shared is a problem halved. What you're doing is you're sharing your problem, but you don't feel like you can trust yet to share it with anybody outside of that. Well, you and your journal's your friend. And just getting it out of your head, you'll start to find your answers, because you now start seeing it as something external to you. That's the first thing. What else can you do to help yourself? When was the last time you treated yourself? When was the last time you put down your mobile phone? Isn't that ironic that I'm saying that and I'm actually on a podcast and I want you to watch the podcast? So when you finish watching the podcast of me, then I want you to make some time to put down your mobile phone. Do not pick it up first thing in the morning. Try to give yourself, let's start off small. Let's start off with wake up in the morning, write in your journal 5 minutes, go to the bathroom and come back before you pick up your mobile phone. So what's that? 15 minutes? Let's try that to begin with. And try and gently build that as 21 days goes by. So do those two things together. You won't get a dopamine hit from your phone as soon as you pick it up, which means that you won't be so prone to falling down the rabbit hole of scrolling onto Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is that you are first thing in the morning, and being sucked into the lives of other people before you've checked in with you to actually see how you're feeling today. And that's really important. So let's give ourselves that. Maya Angelou, and this is not mine, Maya Angelou spoke about taking a day away. And that's something that I try to do for myself once a month. Can't always do it. Sometimes it's an hour away because things are so busy. But a day away means that you let your loved ones know where you're going, and then you turn your phone off. And you spend the day doing something you love. Now, it could be you want to spend the day in bed because it's been a particularly busy month. Then you do that. You stay in bed, you watch Netflix, you eat crisps and peanuts in bed, whatever it is, if that's what you want to do. But it's something that brings you joy. If you want to go for a long walk, if you want to go swimming, if you want to go to the gym, if you feel like just, lying in your garden in your pants, if you're going to do that, please make sure that you've got high fences. But, whatever it is that for you, that you do something for you. Those are ways to help yourself. I say this a lot, but it's the truth. If your cup is empty, you cannot fill anyone else's cup. That means that the people you love, you won't be able to help them because you're going to be on empty. And that's why it's important to put yourself first, not because you're being selfish, but because you're being the absolute... What is the absolute opposite of selfish, actually? Is there a word? There's not, is there? And there should be. There's not a word for that. There should be a word.
Oh, selfish.
Yeah, well, what's the opposite to selfish?
Selfless.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Selfless. There we go. The opposite to selfish is selfless. And if you're being selfless, that means that you are looking out for the people around you that you love. And you cannot do that if you are on empty.